Welcome to the shop, my friends. Steve here at SKS Props, and in today's build video I have part 4 of my Warhammer Dwarf Ironbreaker series. In this video I'm going to focus on his shoulder pads. And just like the helmet, I feel the shoulder pads are a focal point. So I wanted them to be really ornate, really intricate, because when you're checking out a character, 90% of the time you immediately go to the face. And then right after that, for the silhouette, you then have these hulking shoulder pads to his sides that really give him an overall menacing look. Now in this video, I did something I don't normally do, and that was I used my Glowforge laser to make all of these intricate designs around the perimeter of the shoulder pads. Reason I don't normally do this is because most of you don't have a laser, but I felt it was very important to showcase the fact that if you do have a laser, my foam takes lasers really well. And so, like I said, I have a Glowforge, and I will put in the description section all the settings that I use in case you have one too. Just like the helmet and the chest armor, I have free PDF files available over on my website for the shoulder pads. Now, I don't really expect most people to put this together. Again, this series is more of a learning experience of how I go about putting an entire costume together. Just like everything else, this is made completely out of my HD foam, which you can find over at Blick Art Materials. And once again, that's a fantastic way to help support me and the channel, is to go through those links that are in the description section and those that are on my website and pick up some awesome HD foam. So let's go ahead and jump in this video, because I want to show you what it takes to put these shoulder pads together. I take my shoulder pad template and cut that out of some 6mm foam 4 times. Weldwood contact cement is used to glue the two halves together. I'm not really worried about the seam being perfect because I'm going to cover it with detail strips later on. To make sure that this shoulder pad keeps its curve, I'm going to glue a strip of 10mm foam to the underside. The same design that I used for the chest armor is also transferred onto some 4mm foam for the shoulder pads as well. Each piece is then individually cut out and sanded before I glue them onto the shoulder pad. Now this is a large design, so some of it goes past the outline of the shoulder pad. Any additional foam I just trim away. After the design had been glued down, I start to figure out the trim for the shoulder pad. I cut some foam strips out of 6mm foam, and after figuring out the angles, these pieces can then be glued to the shoulder pads. I made a pattern for the curved section of the trim just because this piece was a little bit tougher to figure out. Now, depending on the clan and the lore, there's lots of different iconography the dwarves can have on their shoulder pads. I decided on an axe, and the head of the axe is cut out of some 4mm foam. The handle for the axe is made up of 10, 15, and 20mm half-round dowels. Once I was satisfied with the look of the axe, I could then glue all these pieces directly to the shoulder pad. I double layer the axe head as an additional detail. This is also cut out of 4mm foam. It looks pretty cool, but I felt like it was still missing something, so I cut and applied some small strips of 1mm foam to the handle. One of the concept art pieces that I had found had some really intricate line details that I liked. These pieces were sketched out by hand and then transferred onto some 2mm foam. Now, because these pieces overlap each other, I made a small template that I could follow while gluing them together. Now here you can see I have more material than I need, so after I was happy with the placement, I cut away the excess foam. I glued the design right up next to the handle and then laid it out across the shoulder pad. Now because the shoulder pads are made up of multiple layers, I'm going to cover these up by using a small strip of 4mm foam. I traced the template for the neck guard of the shoulder pad onto some 10mm foam. I'll mark about 1 inch from the top to make sure it's uniformly spaced. Contact cement is used to apply this piece to the inside of the shoulder pad. Now I can trim away the excess foam on either end. I have a small gap where the two pieces of foam meet up, so I'm going to fill this with some quick seal. I add the caulking to the piece with a silicone tip tool and then smooth it out with some water. To make some large fake rivets, I'm going to cut a 15mm dowel into sections. The top of these is then sanded with my rotary tool to make it look as though they're hammered into shape. A little bit of super glue is all I need to put these pieces into place. I created a dwarven design in Photoshop and then transferred that to my Glowforge. As you can see here, the foam is easily cut with a laser. The strips are cleaned up, and then to give them some additional dimension, I'm going to use a heat tool at each one of the intersections. It's a simple process that renders a really cool effect. These sections were cut to length and the ends were sanded before I glued them in between the rivets. I used a small hole punch on some 2mm foam to add fake rivets to the detail lines that I had glued down earlier. At this point, the shoulder pads are done, but they're not attached yet. Once I figure out the spacing, I'll use some nylon strips and parachute clips to attach them to the chest armor. So this wraps up part 4 of our Warhammer Dwarf Ironbreaker series, focusing on these shoulder pads. And hopefully you guys are enjoying the series. You're kind of seeing all the steps that I do behind the scenes to put something like this together. Now, another video that I would like to focus on is burnout, because when you're doing a major costume like this and it's got a lot of pieces and it takes a very long time, burnout is a very real thing. If you are building any of my builds or utilizing HD foam, be sure to tag me on Twitter and Instagram because I want to see your creations. Until next time, build your best with the best. HD foam.